Hello, this is the third of our videos. It's a short version of my personal testimony. And through this, we're hoping to answer the basic question, what will the way of beauty do for you? And we're answering that question by my telling you what it did for me. So I can't promise it'll do the same, but it'll give you a sense of what happened to me. And certainly, I've seen this happen to many others along the way. In the broad changes in my life have occurred to many others. And so I think this means that there's a good chance it will work for you too. That's the idea. So the easiest way to answer that question, as I say, is to give you my story. This is presented in much more detail in the long Vision for You book. So if you've got time to read through that, assuming you're curious, of course, then you can see much more. But it gives you a pattern, I hope, of a dramatic change in outlook. And if I was to summarize it, at the age of 26, I was a skeptical, rather bitter atheist. And I met a man called David Birtwistle by chance, who I had seen had an effect on others. And when I met him, he inspired confidence in me. And I believed that he might be able to help me. He was in his 60s at this time, so it was an unusual thing to do. But I'd seen the effect that he'd had on my friends, and there was something about him that made me trust him. And I asked him to do so. And with his help, even though an atheist, that's what I would have called myself, it sparked a spiritual path for me through prayer and meditation and good works and ultimately creativity. I wanted to be an artist, so I started that, and transformed that bitterness and loneliness and isolation into a profound joy and sense of fulfillment, that was available to me independent of external circumstances and my achievements, actually. Even though I was hoping to be an artist, ultimately I was able to be happy regardless of that. I did eventually become an artist, by the way. This journey ultimately, as I say, fulfilled my dreams of being an artist, marriage and family, and really the great gift was reorienting my life towards a faith in God, and then enabling me to share the gifts that I've been given with others, which gave my life even deeper meaning. So I'm going to give you a few of the highlights. It's very difficult to know how to do this in a short time. I don't want to go on for hours, so don't worry, I won't. But it's just worth giving you a sense of the great change that occurred. So as I say, it began meeting this man, David Birtwistle, and what persuaded me was, first of all, his manner, his willingness to help, and really his description. He didn't promise me that this would work for me. He just described what he'd done and what it had done for him, and what he'd seen it, how he'd seen it work for others. And he said he believed that it would work for me too. So I've tried to mimic his approach with you. You can probably hear how I'm incorporating those things in what I say to you. And then he gave me what you might call the life-changing question. What would you do if you inherited enough money that you never had to work again for the money? How would you spend your day 9 to 5, 5 days a week? And if you then had the money, what would you like your life to be? What sort of state of life would you like? Do you want to be married or single? All these sort of questions. And when he asked me about working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, I instantly said I wanted to become an artist. And he said, well, I think then that's what you should try and do. And I was skeptical, I would say. I didn't think it was possible. He said, we'll just follow these directions. We'll go through these spiritual exercises first, and you'll establish a relationship with God. And then once we've done that, we can discern the call more concretely, and then you can start to work towards it. And so I went through the spiritual exercises of the Vision for You process. Because I was an artist, I also started practicing the creative practice, or I wanted to do that. I signed up for art classes very quickly. And so that's why we suggest that now as part of what we do, because I could see that this was having an additional impact on me. And I believe that in ways that weren't just reflective of the fact that I wanted to be an artist, it affected my capacity to be creative in other ways ultimately. And so that's why we recommend that to you as well. So I began with these daily practices, praying, writing a gratitude list, thanking God for all the blessings that I have, and getting involved in service on a regular basis, making a sacrifice of time, as well as this creative awakening, continued painting, and that all that developed in time, the creativity. Eventually I started writing, actually, and that was a totally new thing for me, which has evolved into publishing several books years later. So I started this, and immediately I began to feel a change. I began to genuinely feel grateful for things that I had taken for granted before, and ultimately began to feel grateful to God. I believe that is contemplation, or what you might call a spiritual awakening, the beginning of a relationship with God. I didn't have any grand visions, or no bright lights or anything like that, no overwhelming sort of moment where I suddenly thought, now I believe. Just gradually this trust increased, and I started to genuinely feel more and more grateful to God for this. I don't think it's an accident, by the way, that when I eventually became Catholic years later, this is where the path led me, that the highest activity is the worship of God, and within that, the high point is the Eucharist, which is Greek for thanksgiving, for giving thanks. That's what we do. We give thanks to God, and that's how we return his love for us. So from that foundation, and having done the practices, I began major life changes, really. I moved towards these goals. I didn't set out the path in detail. I just had these aspirations, but just gradually moved towards this as best as I was able. I did one step, which was, for example, just signing up for art classes, and then one thing led to another. Other doors opened, and as David put it, don't think about the second step until you've done the first. But if each step you take is moving you closer towards your final destination, you'll get there in the end. And I did. And along the way also, certain things that I had less control over, but I was always looking for opportunities, shall we say, happened to me. I did move to the United States, which I always wanted to do. And I'm now married, and I have 2 children. Having said that, I was single for a long time. And what I had to do was overcome my envy of others, and the process allowed me to do that. And along the way, learn to enjoy life regardless of whether I was single or married. And I was able to do that. So I felt less dependent on having these things happening to me. But eventually, a lot of these things that I wished for did. And so, again, it's a wonderful thing for these things to come into my life, to be grateful for them, but not to be dependent upon them for my happiness. That really is about a relationship with God, although it wasn't what I was looking for when I came. And I'll talk about that in a little bit of time. Um, so, yeah, so that's really the big change, a perspective shift, if you like, on what happiness is. So sometimes through being denied them, uh, marriage, I was denied for a long time, and sometimes by being given them and realizing that they're not the ultimate source of happiness. I realized that true happiness comes from God, and that this is available to me regardless of the circumstances. And if the things that I'm unhappy about are things, sometimes even in the face of injustice and great difficulty, I've not, I've had to deal with things that life has thrown at me, like anyone else would have to. But if, as a result of that, I persist with these habits of faith and there's practices of faith and creativity and openness to God, even when times are tough, I have found that I've been able to deal with them cheerfully and with dignity. And even if I'm not happy about what is happening, at the deepest level, I can be happy, and that is a great gift. Um, Having said that, it's not as if good things have happened to me. It isn't all about dealing with disappointment. As I mentioned, I did eventually get married. I did eventually become an artist. I moved to the US, and my first job was as artist in residence at a liberal arts college in New Hampshire, Tunstall College of Liberal Arts. And I now view my vocation as one of flourishing in faith and the love of God, and that actually these things that were originally the end, these achievements, I wanted to be an artist, I wanted to be married, actually have shifted to become a means to the end. So they were my original goals, and reluctantly and hesitatingly, I accepted the idea of God as a means to these ends that I thought would make me happy. As a result of this process, all of that has reversed. God is the means to that end, but he's also the end. And the life events actually become themselves what you might call proximate ends, but they contribute to and therefore are means to the highest end in life. So everything then potentially can contribute to my being a better person if I do it well. Whether I deal with the joy of things going my way or the disappointment of things not going my way, but whether if these things all need me to greater gratitude or to search God more diligently, then ultimately they're all opening the door to a greater and greater happiness. Now, of course, I'm not going to say I always respond well. I can sometimes be dismayed, actually, at how badly I respond to things. But when I reflect on this, and I know I've got these tools that I've been given, there is always a way out and a way to a happy life at the deepest level. The other thing that happened is that I started to really enjoy passing on the gifts that I've been given. First of all, starting to help others meant that I had to really practice what I was preaching. Very difficult to tell someone to pray every day if you're not doing it yourself. So it helped me to be more diligent in doing the things that I was asked to do. But of course, that just meant that I had a happier life. But the encouragement of seeing others do it and wanting to pass it on, and the joy of seeing them see their lives change too, became an additional source of joy for me. It became another aspect of a richer life. This is why I'm talking to you today, is because I get a sense of fulfillment from the idea and from the practice of passing this on to others, and the thought that this may be helping other people. This is not a limited sum game. We've tapped into the infinite here, and the more we mine, the more there is to mine, if you can put it like that. And one is just the final thing I would say is a sort of great message of encouragement through and positivity through faith. It's not as a dogged positive thinking program where I draw the strength from within myself by looking to God and believing that God loves me, and that all is done for a greater good and all happens to me for a greater good. I began as a highly skeptical atheist on this path that worked profoundly. And I believe that it can transform anyone who is willing to believe in God. Willing mean take the actions as though he did, as though he does exist, and lives their lives according to. That's, of course, is what a genuine faith is. It isn't just that I believe that God exists or think he might exist. It really is that I act as though he does. I act in a way that is consistent with that belief. And so it really is a life of faith that I believe is there for anybody who wishes to have it. So that's it. And I hope that you may find the great joy in this that I found.